quite a few of my friends, like you're their main source of news.
Not your smartest friends, I guess.
Are you combined the Joe Rogans of the left?
Rant incoming.
Please.
Wind them up.
What are we doing? Like,
The battle for the future of the Democratic Party is not going to play out like it used to.
We need candidates who are going to try to challenge the status quo.
Is the Democrat Party having its Tea Party movement?
We'll see who wins. That'll tell us a lot about the future of the party.
How are you doing? When you guys set up this company, there was very solid MAGA media infrastructure, right, online. And it seems, and I think you guys were early in this space in terms of like having an alternative point of view and having the progressive left, whatever Democrat sort of media ecosystem. Have you felt a sort of greater sense of responsibility almost given how much you've grown and given that, you know, a lot of people are just not watching us anymore. They're not watching the news.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I mean, look, there are definitely times when you do an episode, you forget that it goes out to a lot of people. I'll have that experience often. And someone will cite back something terrible I said or stupid or some offensive joke. And, I probably shouldn't have done that. So there is a bit of a sense of responsibility. I think the job gets more complicated when there's a Democratic primary. That's when the fights get kind of more personal and uglier and harder to adjudicate. When it's commentary about what the Trump administration is doing, there tends to be more agreement.
And you mentioned when it gets tricky for you guys is what's happening right now, right? The Democratic primaries. John, you interviewed, I think it was you who most recently interviewed Hasan Piker, right?
You heard about that.
There's a whole platforming debate. Clearly you don't buy into the idea that somebody like Hasan Piker should not be given a platform.
How dare you platform someone with a huge platform?
We want to have conversations with everyone from the far left to never Trumpers, maybe even, Republicans, just because we think conversations are interesting, and we also trust our audience to make up their own minds based on differing viewpoints, opposing viewpoints, views they haven't heard before. And I think, whether you like this or not, Hasan has a lot of people who listen to him. And even if you're someone who doesn't like Hasan's views, then you should want to make sure that you try to reach his audience and change their minds if they are believing some of the views of his that you don't want them to believe, right? I don't think that talking to someone or having conversation with someone is rewarding them with anything. I think it's sort of what we started this to do, which was to have conversations with people who are involved in politics and let the audience decide what to make of that.
I think the Democratic Party's got to move away from this dumb debate about platforming. Certain fringe cases, sure, right? I'm not going to put like a literal neo-Nazi on the show, but mostly I think it did enormous harm to the Democratic Party, to Democratic candidates, that we refused to go on other people's shows at a purity test. Remember when Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan's show and he was attacked? That didn't end well for anyone, right? So I think let's go to different places, let's have conversations with people who might not agree with us, and let reasonable adults kind of sort out what they think about it.
There was this moment after the 2024 election where Democrats were reflecting. There was this talk of, well, we need a Joe Rogan of the left. Are you combined?
No.
like
The Joe Rogans of the left?
Like a Gundam? That was such a... Joe Rogan, we have this strange...
Rant incoming.
It's just, please,
Wind them up.
It's so... what are we doing? The Joe Rogan of the left.
I think the reason the whole Joe Rogan of the left thing was dumb is Joe Rogan is not of the left or the right. He's a guy who hosts a show with a massive audience who one week might talk politics, the next week might talk ultimate fighting, the next week has some expert on aliens. And so you're just reaching a ton of people who might not consume political news. And I think that's the hardest thing in politics right now. It's not like sharpening your message, it's getting that message to people who might be sporadic voters. And that's why not going on that show was so dumb, because he reaches a ton of people who are just literally never going to consume Pod Save America or CNN or political news.
What we'd like you to help us with is, as the Democratic primaries are ongoing, we have the the Hassan Pikers who want to blow things up in a way. There's the sort of David Hoggs who want to challenge incumbents, and then there's James Carville who says, stop trying to move to the left, stick to the center. Sort of hoping you guys can help as be in the demilitarized zone.
We'll figure it out.
We're the DMZ.
Well, yeah. Have you guys moved to the left? Has the whole party moved to the left since you were working in the White House?
This is going to seem like I'm dodging the question, but I don't think you can just use the general term to the left and the whole party. Yeah. As you were talking about those individuals, my mind went to, okay, like, where's the Venn diagram? Where do they overlap? And I think where they would all agree is, and I think about Carville here, is that the party needs to be more economically populist and also take aim at the corruption of this administration. And I think that that is the area where you would get most agreement from most people on most sides of the party. I think it's not just like having the positions on the cultural issues, because I think you can be fairly progressive on a lot of these issues. It's the you have these positions, someone else doesn't have these positions. How are you going to convince them that they should agree with you? I think that what would unite most of the party right now is the fact that, and I think Trump has helped with this, and the way he has acted in the second administration is, it's a smash and grab administration. He went in there, he's getting as rich as possible, all his friends are getting as rich as possible, he's corrupt as hell, and everyone else is really hurting. And even beyond Trump and before Trump, inequality in this country was expanding at a rapid clip, and there's a lot of people in both parties and across all ideologies who are really pissed off about it. And we need candidates who are not necessarily tied to the establishment, but who are outsiders, whether they're to the left or the center left, who are going to try to challenge the status quo.
Do you guys buy that as that Israel can be viewed as this proxy issue?
I mean, I think it's up to every individual to decide, what's the thing you care about the most.
So in the past, year or two, there have been these repeated resolutions by Bernie Sanders and Chris Murphy about military aid to Israel. And slowly but surely, more and more Democrats in the Senate, Democrats that all support Israel's right to exist, to defend itself, have slowly come on board with needing to use America's support for Israel as a means for actually trying to curtail Israel's worst excesses and abuses, right? And as a Jewish person who is really worried about anti-Semitism, but also hates to see how Benjamin Netanyahu has turned Israel into a global pariah and destroyed a bipartisan consensus around Israel that existed for decades, I am glad to see that, because Democrats need to adapt.
I can only speak for myself. I would rather candidates not take money from AIPAC. I would rather candidates say that they don't want to vote for more military aid to Israel after what we've seen in the last several years. But also, it's a big world and a big country, and there's a lot of issues. And I don't want to start going down the path, even as we head into 2028, where I say, all right, if you're not with me on this issue, I don't want to listen to you. Candidate by candidate, I'm going to assess the totality of all of their positions on all of the different issues as a voter. And I expect that's how most people in the country view this as well.
There's the primary in Michigan right now where you're going to have Abdul El-Sayed, who's very critical of Israel, talks about cutting off funding, talks about the genocide in Gaza. And then there's a far more pro-Israel candidate. We'll see who wins. That'll tell us a lot about the future of the party. I think people like us, people like James Carville, we're better off when we try to analyze what the voters ultimately tell us in these elections or through surveys or opinion polls or whatever, than predicting where they will go, especially as we all age. Our views become not necessarily representative of the majority of the electorate, who are younger and just have a different perspective.
Is the Democrat Party having its Tea Party movement to move to the left?
I don't know if there's a Tea Party moment. I think there's a debate about what voters want and what makes a candidate electable. Is it because you're a populist, you're relentlessly focused on economic issues, you're maybe not a lawyer or a traditional politician, but you're someone new that feels more authentic? We'll find out. Or there's others who think no, actually what we need is to sand down some of the edges, walk back some of the more extreme or furthest left positions the party has taken and run more moderate candidates. Again, I think we're going to find out in the elections coming up. I do think we're at a different moment in that the battle for the future of the Democratic Party is not going to play out like it used to.
While ideology and ideological battles are important and they will be discussed, they are maybe over-discussed in an era where so much of the divide is outsider, insider, establishment versus, grassroots. And I don't necessarily think that is always ideologically cohesive. I think some of it is generational. And so I think as these primaries play out, what we're seeing is a lot of just candidates who either haven't run for office before or are younger, who haven't been in DC forever, and some of them are further to the left and some of them are more towards the center. And that to me is more interesting and more telling about where the party's going than just left center at this point.
Yeah, we had an election, right? Mamdani won, Spanberger won, Mikey Sherrill won, right? Like, they're all the future of the Democratic Party. We're very used to finding the kind of the grooves of the left, center, left debate. I think sometimes we go to the left, center, because it's what we're used to talking about. And honestly, it's because the left has done an amazing job of demonstrating a clear kind of direction for the country, and the rest of Democratic politicians have not been as good as that. But my hope is that we can have kind of bigger and more specific, a wider range of topics about which we kind of figure out like the best path forward, whether it's like, building infrastructure more quickly, what we're going to do about monopolies, right? Like, there's a lot of topics that aren't cleanly ideological, and it's fun to do a left-center debate. They're easy, we're good at it, everyone does it, but maybe life is a little bit more complicated